You should work on the most important problem that you can imagine, even though it seems harder. Why? Because the best people want to work on really important problems. The best capital, the best investors want to invest in really important problems, right? And the biggest businesses that exist in the world that go out and create the maximum amount of wealth and impact and other things often are businesses that solve like really fundamental problems.
Alrighty, hello everyone and welcome to the Dealmaker Show. So today we have a founder that has started so many companies that I got dizzy. I mean, a lot. And we're talking about a lot, but also a lot with success. Several of them, with exits, with great exits. And again, today we're going to be talking about focusing on the right problem, thinking about bootstrapping versus raising money, what, may cause the switch from, tackling one industry versus another. And a lot of good stuff, that has to do about the building, the scaling, the financing, the exiting, all of those type of topics that we like to cover. But again, brace yourself for a very inspiring conversation today. And without further ado, let's welcome our guest today, Alex Hawkinson. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Big fan and excited to be here.
So originally born and raised in Minnesota, but the family from Sweden, quite the entrepreneurial origins that you had. So Alex, give us a walk through memory lane. How was life growing up for you?
Cold and dark in Minnesota. No, it was, I think like waves of immigration across the U.S. Just my relatives like immigrated to Minnesota from Norway and Sweden, and grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. Like had a pretty lucky life in a lot of respects. But if you don't know about Minnesota, it gets deeply cold in the winter. So I was excited as an adult to to get out of there. But grew up again in a family of entrepreneurs, learning at the dinner table. You sort of don't go get jobs, you have to make them. And, everything started from there.
So obviously for you, after Carnegie Mellon, getting your degree, it was creating your own job, and that was the first company, which was Infrapreneur. How do you enter the venture world? How was that for you?
I mean, for me, it was, just always been somebody that I love. I'm a very curious learner. And so I like to go down rabbit holes and to see where it leads me. So I was lucky, when I graduated from CMU, I had, programming experience and other things, but the internet was just emerging. And so I started tinkering, building websites on the side, which nobody knew how to do. It was the kind of Wild West of the early internet days. And one thing led to another. I had sort of friends ask me, how do I do it? And then eventually businesses asking me to help them in building sites, and then eventually web applications and those things. And so built the business up, and it was acquired as part of a roll-up of a much larger business. But my early career days, just happened to coincide with the emergence of one of the biggest technology enablers of our time.
So then from there you went to Aptix, and Aptix was a spin-out company. I guess that there in Aptix, the most incredible thing, that happened in terms of lessons learned is really figuring out how to focus, and to have a great team to focus on the right problem. So tell us a bit more about this.
One of the second stages in the internet was, people thought, okay, instead of having applications that we host on a server inside of the four walls of a business, it seems so obvious now, but you'll host them outside. But it wasn't SaaS yet. So these were desktop applications that you would basically host in the cloud and otherwise. And Aptix became the biggest in its space. It was providing hosted like email and messaging and calendaring and things for small businesses. And it was just, even though it was successful, it was a really challenging business. And why? Because, are you solving an important enough problem? I mean, if you're a small business owner, I'll ask you, do you wake up and think about hosted messaging every day? No, the answer is no. You think about how to find customers, how to service customers, what's your product, those things. And so Aptix was a great experience, and we had a good, success in the company. But I started to feel this need, even if you have a great team, which I have there, if you focus them on a problem that's not meaningful, it's like you can manage to push the boulder up the hill. But as I'll talk through later experiences, if you pick the right problem with a great team, it feels a million times easier, because right people, the right capital, all the things want to happen, for the right type of business problem.
So you eventually ended up leaving Optics, and the next thing was SMB Live, which was the next company that you started. Now with SMB Live, that was quite the bootstrapped journey. So tell us about what you were doing at SMB Live and why bootstrapping the operation versus raising VC money.
I mean, so what SMB Live was doing is trying to solve a slightly more important problem than Aptix was, but it was helping small businesses connect with customers on the web. So if you're familiar with HubSpot, today they've become a massive company. It's sort of in that zone. I had a lot of experience from both US Web, who acquired my first business, and then from Aptix and sort of investor relationship management and those things. And both the sensitivity to my attitude is you shouldn't raise money before you really know the pattern in the business. Like once you've got product market fit, or you really understand, exactly the repeatable pattern in what you're doing, even if you can raise money before that, I think it's a mistake, because you end up at odds with the investor. It creates all sorts of pressures, and this was further reinforced when we'll go to later stages with Smart Things and BrightAI, et cetera. But so yeah, at SMB Live, learned you bootstrap, you have total control all the way. We did find product market fit. We had an exit. We were acquired by a great company called Reach Local, and the beauty in bootstrapping is, even if it's not as massive of an exit, the people that founded it, you can still have a really meaningful outcome on that front. But I think the biggest takeaway is, again, you don't raise outside money until you know the market pattern that you really want to go and solve, completely, or you're going to end up in a tense situation.
And I guess second acquisition, what at this point, what would you say you had learned about the acquisition process and getting a good deal done?
Oh man, there's a lot of things there, and they continue to unfold in later stages too. I mean, I think in the early ones, I was just like happy to have the money. As a young guy, in all of them, it's less the acquisition and more what happens afterwards. That matters on different fronts. I mean, obviously, it's great as an entrepreneur to have liquidity and have an outcome in a business, but you got to be mindful, obviously, of who you're joining forces, with, and realizing like your ability to control the destiny of the company is effectively gone, the second you go through this acquisition process. So, but I think what I learned in the beginning is like, wow, it's really nice in life to have a little bit of liquidity. Stupid as that sounds, lets you do a lot of things, like take bolder risks down the line, if you can have.
Well, I mean, since you're talking about liquidity, what was the first thing that you bought, when that liquidity hits the bank?
I think I paid off my mortgage. That was like the thing. I tend to hate banks, nothing broadly against them, but, I think that was the thing that felt the best. So,
So I know that well, that's good. But look, I think that nothing feels better than, being on the stepping up on the green grass. It feels greener when that mortgage is gone. So I can totally see that. Now, in your case, at that point, you were starting to form a family, having young kids, and obviously, you were looking at bigger problems to solve at this point, especially having had that experience, with building, raising and exiting companies. Smart Things. Why Smart Things? Why did you think that problem was meaningful enough, and how did you go about taking action there?
Like I said, even from those earlier learnings, like really felt like, wow, if you get good at seeing what's coming around the corner and constructing a great team, the risk with a great team is if you focus them on the wrong problem. And so I felt even a bit with SMB Live, I was thinking like too small. And having kids, you think about having a bigger impact in the world. I also, what do I want to represent to them? Like, what am I most curious about? And I was kind of getting bored in this, like, call it SaaS, space. Like, I could have just continued on, but I, with the next business, like incrementally in that space, but, had this sort of mindset. And I had a thing happen in a family home that's out in the mountains in Colorado, where it was wiped out by a freezing power went out, pipes froze and burst, which happens in certain places, maybe not where you're from, but in Minnesota it certainly does. Out in Colorado it does. And we had to do a lot of work to sort of recover all this damage. And it was at that point where we all had smartphones at that stage. This is 2011, 2012. You could download a book over the air on your Kindle, and I was like, how is it possible that all these physical spaces that we occupy that are so important, in this case, a home, how can those be offline if I can freaking, have my kids watching Dora the Explorer on a smartphone on the side? But so Smart Things really started out of inspiration of well, even though I don't have expertise in this area, this seems like a really massive problem space, bringing intelligence to physical spaces in the world. And so started it up around that. And I found there's another lesson, but to follow your curiosity. Sometimes, even if you don't have experience in a given area, if you bring your curiosity and hard work into it, sometimes not having experience in that domain actually helps you, because you don't suffer from the groupthink of everybody that was doing things in that space. So anyway, Smart Things went on to, it became one of the largest consumer IoT platforms in the world, far bigger than I really imagined at the beginning. And I think that's a function of great idea, really important problem, bringing intelligence into these physical spaces, and and great team and all those other experiences. So much bigger platform than any other of my previous efforts before that.
No kidding. 500 million households that were touched by Smart Things, which is remarkable. I guess
it always at what point? Yeah. Just side note, I remember it was my house in the beginning. It was one event per day from the one sensor I hooked up. And I think it's something on the order. It's millions of events per second flow through the platform now. And it's just crazy to think about. Anyway, sorry.
No kidding. No kidding. Now, at what point does Samsung come knocking?
Well, it's funny I have a mantra in building businesses. As a side note, and this isn't the direct question you asked, but it'll lead to it, which is, how I calibrated saying, from my earlier days of not working on the wrong problem, it takes 3 to 5 years to build something great, it takes real time, but you should know in 18 months, if it's going to be great or not. And that's my internal catchphrase for don't waste your time. If you don't feel it in your bones as an entrepreneur 18 months in, you're probably focusing on the wrong problem space and otherwise. So also what happens in that is you know what's going on in your business. You start to get some dimensions around it. You think it could be everything. And you start to get some parameters, okay, here's some limitations. Here's how much capital it's going to take, all of that. And with Smart Things, a lot of lessons there, but we had gotten so stuck in the smart home space because we raised venture capital, I think, too early in it. And we were constrained to we have to have a product we can sell in the market, et cetera. And building along, and Google bought Nest as a company, and it was a giant acquisition. The second that happened, I could see in the developer platform for Smart Things, all these signups from all these other big technology companies as developers, oh, that's interesting. 50 guys from Microsoft signed up today, whatever. And the big technology titans just decided, now's the moment. We're either going to compete with Google in the smart home space, or we're going to seed this market. And so they all came shopping and knocking. So basically, backdrop there is, I understood it was going to be capital intensive. It was hard to go it all on your own. A big titan had just entered the space, and we had an opportunity to raise more capital, or we could join forces and really go for it, at the biggest scale we could. So we ended up making that decision, and I can chat about what led to the next thing after that. But anyway, and it was a great partnership though. It's fascinating. Biggest company I'd ever been in before that was Reach Local. It had a few thousand employees. Samsung has hundreds of thousands. It was quite an eye-opening and great learning experience.
Rumored to be a $200 million acquisition, so quite the outcome. I know that for the next one, for BrightAI, your wife, had a pivotal role. So tell us, what happened?
I would say on that journey, as I said, I was sort of constantly yearning for and I feel like I finally found it with BrightAI, my life's purpose in terms of the impact I'll have in the world. But So the backstory on Smart Things is like my wife progressively hated the platform every year, like worse and worse, like because I was always running like the advanced applications for home automation. Oh, when I show up and I'm here, but my wife's not home, the lights are going to turn on this way. But when she arrives home, these other things are going to happen, whatever else. And she just wasn't a fan of home automation. She wanted me to go back to like, just a light switch, that you have on your wall. And it got me I'll just say it got me thinking like, hey, we started in this bringing intelligence to the physical world. That was a good idea. We ended up being constrained to the smart home because that's a giant space. Is this the highest and best use for these technologies? And I would say she's my soulmate. I mean, she's my biggest critic and my biggest fan as well. But her saying like, hey, these aren't important problems that you're working on. You thought it was important. The idea was good, but you're focused on the wrong segment. So that led to Bright, which is sort of, if you roughly close your eyes a little bit, you'd say it's like Smart Things for the world's critical infrastructure and services, like the really important problems. And we can get into that as well. But I took that away, and I feel like I finally found it, and I thank her for that.
So tell us about the business model. What is BrightAI? How are you guys making money?
Yeah, so BrightAI we're building, we say physical AI for the world's essential services. So on the backdrop of that conversation with my wife, I was like, what are the most important problems you could solve with these technologies like IoT and AI and bringing intelligence into these real world environments? And what I concluded was it's like the stuff that you die if you don't have it. Like smart lighting can go away and you're fine. Like if you don't have water, you die. If you don't have energy, as a civilization, like civilization dies, like oil and gas and electricity. Essential services like, with climate change, it's exacerbating it more, but HVAC, like you change your schedule in the day, your HVAC goes out at home, a hot summer day, you're like changing your plans, right? Pest control, like these things where in our food supply after the pandemic. So BrightAI is building called physical AI solutions, which combine hardware and software to sort of revolutionize like how the world manages these key parts of infrastructure, our water supply, our power supply, our energy supply, and those things. So the business model is it's evolved. I mean, we bootstrapped a long ways, and I can chat about that. So in the beginning, the business model was a little bit different. Now, as we're maturing, it's pretty simple. It's these big infrastructure owners like power companies, or let's say, pay us per endpoint. So these AI endpoints that they leave in the physical environment. So if you want to monitor every manhole cover, let's say, or something in the water supply, and then they pay us per unit of work for our robotics platform. So when we're doing robotic assessment or inspection or maintenance of these things, it's like we align with how our customers make their money. They're paid by per unit of work, effectively.
Now, obviously, with a company like BrightAI, being a founder that has done so many companies, with great exits, especially the previous one to Samsung, I'm sure you had the investors really knocking on your door day one. Now, one thing that you decided to do was bootstrap the operation, and you bootstrap it not to a couple of million or where you would be like, we proved this thing, we validated. You bootstrap the whole thing to 80 million in revenue. That's kind of like crazy. I mean, why did you wait so long until you raised money, and why did you raise money at that point?
It's not for the faint of heart, bootstrapping to that level. But I mean, the simple answer is I didn't feel I'd found the pattern yet. I knew I was focused on the right problem, but I didn't yet have the pattern for what is the product, to simplify it, the Lego blocks of what physical AI means for this critical infrastructure and essential services. It just wasn't clear. It's a really ambitious business, and it's a big platform now. And so it was those earlier career lessons. Like I could raise money right now, but I don't personally know exactly what the pattern is yet. And so I want the optionality to continue where I can figure that out in whatever way makes the biggest possible business and impact happen. So, so my belief is, when that's your situation, just go out and start talking to customers. So we went out and started talking to people that manage critical infrastructure. And I can talk about the model if you want of how we did that. But end of the day, work directly with them, try to break even, eating what we killed, so to speak, in terms of those projects. And then you can just feel it. As an entrepreneur, like at least, could feel it in 2024, that's the last year. You can just feel when it clicks into place, like, aha, I've got it now. Like I understand the building blocks we need to go build. Once you have the pattern, that's when you go raise venture, because it's like, I know what I want to build now. Like I don't need to ask other customers to pay me in advance for that. I'm going to go make it, the way I see it and make it available to everybody. So that was sort of the big transition moment. It's just a big business. And so it took a while to find that pattern.
So then for this too, I mean, tell us about raising money. I mean, you've raised quite a bit. What has been the journey from the moment that you're like, okay, we're going to raise? How do you filter the right investors for the right reasons? I mean, obviously at this point you have leverage, you can get anyone that you want. And then what was the thought process, from going from one cycle to the next on the financing side?
Well, the first was I wanted to be a moderate amount of capital. I always think in terms of what can I responsibly spend in the pattern that I know? Like I could raise more, but what can I responsibly spend? Like I know what I would do with it, and then add a little bit on top of that, just for figuring things out as you go. But first process with this, it sort of came to me. I didn't run a process, so it's high quality investors are worth so much to an entrepreneur, and so I had worked with Upfront Ventures on another company. And so I actually didn't talk to anybody else. I just called the partner at Upfront Ventures, Nick Kim, who I'd worked with on a different business, and they wrote the check. And so we raised 15 million in our seed round for Bright, and that's the number was because that's what I could responsibly spend at that point. So that was like the first beginning. We used that to really crystallize all of our first customers coming into production, and I can describe what Bright does more if you want. And then for the next round, we had it come to us. I mean, I think by choosing to get as far as we got without capital on the outside, now we have a real appetite. And so we were originally going to raise in about 6 months from now, but we had somebody preemptively come in and offer us money, and then another person preemptively offer us money. And so we decided to run a real process this time and went out and we're able to get our pick of what we think are the best investors for our space.
So what's the total amount raised to date, Alex?
Total raise to date is a bit over 75 million. So we just announced, happy to say this, $51 million Series A. And again, capped, we could have raised more, but capped at the level that I know exactly what we're going to do with it, but led by Cooley Ventures and Inspired Capital. And we can see our space accelerating, really feel the pattern with customers now and the impact we can have in the world. So Cooley, they're like the best investor in AI, in our opinion. They were the first and earliest the biggest check into OpenAI. And Inspired Capital, we loved because they're really deep in critical infrastructure. The background on their company, Penny Pritzker, who was the Secretary of Commerce under Obama, it's her family, is involved in the fund, and they're really tied to commerce and infrastructure and the types of companies that serve these critical sectors that we want to go after. So
what does BrightAI do? You were talking about that. Please walk us through it.
So the tagline would be this physical AI for the world's essential services, but to describe what that means. So I didn't know anything about this. Like I said, I'm curious and a learner, but I didn't know anything about critical infrastructure really before. Software entrepreneur, a smart home, stuff, other things. And what was amazing to me is, and our customers always laugh at this, but it's true. Like the Romans, we basically still manage infrastructure the way the Romans did. Like we're still in the Roman era of infrastructure management. And I say that as both like a hat tip to the Romans. Like they were pretty freaking advanced for what they're taught 2,000 years ago. But they'd be laughing at us because they'd be like, seriously, guys, like in all this time, and so they send time-based human visits, like in critical infrastructure, let's say your power poles, you send somebody out to inspect them, whether there's a problem or not, just in case there's a problem. All these sectors work the same way, like time-based human visits. brutal jobs. I mean, you have to wear a hard hat and protective equipment to go out to. I was just out in the Permian Basin in West Texas last week, where like a lot of the oil energy in the country comes from. And like, you have a lot of empathy for these jobs. They're brutal, repetitive, dirty, dangerous work. And then really steep learning curves. Like, to be a technician in one of these spaces takes decades. To become a master artisan, I guess, would have been the Romans. But so what BrightAI does is it fixes all that with physical AI. So we've got a platform we call Stateful. And it's like, the dorky programmer word for that would be like, it's like, everything that's going on in the physical world, the state of it at all times. So we have a set of technology that uses sensors and edge AI that you can leave in the environment and understand what's happening in any of these types of infrastructure. So if the pole's leaning, or if the water's not flowing, or if the HVAC system is breaking, or whatever it might be. Then we've got a wearable and copilot technology. So if you have a worker that you send out to fix the problem, they're carrying AI with them, and it can guide like a less trained worker to be as good as somebody that's got a lot more experience. So it lets young people enter that workforce and like be effective really quickly. And then for everything that we can automate on those brutal, dirty, dangerous jobs, we've created a robotics platform. So you sense what's going on in the environment with physical AI and this edge AI. Sometimes you send the human, sometimes you send now the robot to fix the infrastructure. And that lets us get to this post-Roman era. So what it does for us is make all the infrastructure run better. Who doesn't want cleaner, better water and more efficient energy and, and all these other things. So that's in a nutshell, that's what BrightAI does.
So if you wake up in a world where the vision of BrightAI is fully realized, what does that world look like, Alex?
I mean, obviously we're at an interesting time in history with AI right now, and you could talk both directions on what it's going to do. But I'm a big believer that one of the scenarios is this opportunity for a world of abundance. So I believe, like, if Bright's successful, like, everyone, all humanity has access to these key services that they need in order to, like, for civilization to thrive. So it means like more efficient energy that doesn't go down and doesn't start wildfires, and like have, there's 150 billion in economic losses just from power outages in the US every year. That all goes away. I think with energy is amply available. I think water is clean and well treated, and we're not like diffusing wastewater and toxins out into the environment. HVAC, I'll take picking industries off the top of my head, like, it's 50% of the energy use in households and buildings. Like, that runs way more efficiently and uses less energy and also lasts, twice as long without the capital expenditures. Pest control, I think we can eliminate most of the pesticides used, because instead of carpet bombing the universe with poison, you literally surgically know, like, oh, there's a pest I don't want in my food warehouse right now. Let me deal with it surgically in a way. So it's like, it's a world where, I don't want to say Star Trek future, because there's a lot of other elements people are building for that, but it's a world where all the things that you need to live like a happy life and have a healthy, civilization, that those are abundantly available and done in this like modernized way.
So I guess shifting gears here, what is a person that has made an incredible impact in your life that perhaps led to doing a business?
There's a lot to pick from. I'd have to pick John Kozer. He was a high school teacher of mine. He taught the STEM classes, so he taught physics and things. But he was just such a passionate, like one of those passionate, curious people. Like, it's in an infectious way. And I'm sure you've met people like that just like always want to look under the covers, and the joy of doing that causes you to get on the train as well. And he was into astronomy and space. So he's taught in this public high school I went to. He taught an optional like astronomy course that he invented himself. And, we'd go out and lay on the, just do hands-on activities, learning about the sky and what's happening in outer space. And led to curiosity and this lifelong learning that I think any entrepreneur needs. But it also led me to like a lifelong interest in space, which I'm a founder and chairman of a space infrastructure company as one of the things that I do. And it's, I have to thank John, and I'm still like yearning to give back to the world at some level what he inspired in me. But that's somebody I really, really care for, and I'm so thankful for his impact.
So, I mean, unbelievable the amount of companies that you have been involved with, over the course of your journey. I guess if I was to put you into a time machine and you're able to bring back yourself with all this knowledge, wealth of knowledge, and I brought you back in time to that moment where you were perhaps getting your degree from Carnegie and thinking about launching something of your own. If you had the opportunity of showing up and giving that younger Alex one piece of advice before launching a business, what would that be and why, given what you know now?
It would be the importance of the problem you solve. Like you should work on the most important problem that you can imagine, because even though it seems harder, like these easy problems, like these small convenient problems to go solve, they're convenient because they don't really matter that much in a way. Like they they often are going to be businesses that are just incremental, like incremental small movements from where something already is, versus the big problems are paradoxically in some sense easier to solve. Like, because why? Because the best people want to work on really important problems. The best capital, the best investors want to invest in really important problems, right? And the biggest businesses that exist in the world that go out and create the maximum amount of wealth and impact and other things often are businesses that solve like really fundamental problems. So I think it would be that. I think I think if I had just one knob turn of that advice, even if I was the young stupid me and I was like, okay, oh, all right, listen, this one knob turn I think would have at least 10x'd where I would be right now, because everything compounds on itself. When you solve better problems, you get more experience and better people capital and everything else.
Absolutely. Well, Alex, for the people that are listening that would love to reach out and say hi, what is the best way for them to do so?
You can reach me in lots of different places, but of course, this Alex at bright.ai is a great spot. On Instagram, you can find me in my astronomy geekiness at Gazing Outwards, and of course, everybody can find me on LinkedIn and other places like that. But you can track me down.
Amazing. Well, easy enough. Well, Alex, thank you so much for being on the Dealmaker Show today. It has been an absolute honor to have you with us.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.